Hello and welcome to Sunday Chat for the 27th of January, which happens to be this coming Sunday. As you can see, I'm recording this video in a different location than usual. In fact, behind me is a beautiful natural scene of woodlands, and if you're very fortunate, you will perhaps notice a cardinal on the bird feeder. You might see squirrels scurrying around, and very, very possibly there may be deer that come up to the window. But of course, I cannot see any of these things. I've just come in from trudging in the snow, had a wonderful time with my camera, just photographing all kinds of things. But now I'm inside and my back is to the window. My back is to the view. And so unlike earlier this afternoon when I was beholding everything, every tiny little spot of beauty in the very frozen world outside, ice particles, frozen streams, trees bending under the weight of snow. Well, now I have my back to the window and I cannot see this beauty behind me. Which brings me to the whole topic of seeing, which is one of the reasons Jesus came into the world. When he claims the text of Isaiah 61 as his mission in life, he claimed to come to open the eyes of the blind. And he wasn't just speaking about the literal blind, like the man born blind or blind Bartimaeus. He was talking about spiritual blindness. And when I think about this, I come up with three categories of spiritual blindness. The first is the inability to see the beautiful world around us. And again, people go through life perhaps with their backs to the window, their backs to the view. They fail to behold the most incredible beauty around them, even if they're in the most beautiful scenic spots on the face of the earth, above the earth, beneath the earth, in the waters, in the heights, wherever they happen to be. Some people are simply blind to the world's beauty. And they fail to see that it's a manifestation of the divine presence. And so basically they may have traveled far and wide, but their backs are to the window, their backs are to the view, especially if they deny the presence of the Creator in creation. The second form of blindness that I want to refer to is our blindness to our own failings. And here no one is exempt. I think we all have some of that blindness within ourselves, where we like to think we are better than we are, where we don't face up to the truth of who we are, where we may have grandiose notions as to the kind of human being we happen to be. And what we need is some kind of an epiphany moment to wake us up to the reality, to wake us up to the fact that we're not as compassionate as we might imagine, not as inclusive as we might think, that we're not as forgiving as we assumed we were. Basically, we have all kinds of faults and failings that we don't fess up to. And so this is spiritual blindness. A great exemplar of this is Mrs. Turpin in Flannery O'Connor's story, Revelation. And in this particular story, Mrs. Turpin is someone who believes that Jesus has made her absolutely perfect. And she's constantly praising the Lord that God made her just the way God did and that she was better than other people. And anyway, her whole inner world was revolving around her superiority to others. Until one day she's in a waiting room in a doctor's office, and there is a strange young girl who is reading, engrossed in a book. And at some point, just as Mrs. Turpin is thinking to herself how terrible all the people in the waiting room are, how what bad class they are, and what else, how ignorant, and she's priding herself on being superior, and suddenly the girl, whose name happens surprisingly to be Mary Grace, hurls a book at her which hits her on the head and tells her, "Go back to hell where you came from, you old warthog." And so Mrs. Turpin then has to face the fact that somebody thinks she is hell-worthy. And in fact, at the end of the story, she has a vision of herself at the very end of all the lines of strange misfits processing to the pearly gates of the kingdom of heaven. And she brings up the very, very rear. And so she realizes that what she assumed was virtue in herself was really pride. So that's an example, a rather extreme example of how we are spiritually blind to ourselves and to our failings. And then thirdly, we are blind to the fate of our brothers and sisters. that we tend to walk past those in need, or we don't even see them. Sometimes we are completely oblivious to the sufferings of other people on this planet, whether they are people suffering at our borders, children, for example, children separated from their parents, families separated from one another, people desperate to find asylum because of the horrendous conditions back home, which include torture and certain death. Sometimes we're oblivious to the fate of people right here in our own city. Driving here this morning, as I came to this beautiful cottage, this beautiful site, I drove past a section of the expressway right from downtown Chicago, where there's a whole city of tents, where people are living in tents and behind sheets right along the expressway. And I don't know where you are in the country or in the world, but right now Chicago's temperatures are something in the region of 10 to 14 degrees Fahrenheit, with a wind chill factor that's even colder. And so there are people then living in these tents with no protection from the elements. And it's easy to drive past and forget they're there, or not even to see them at all. So then our spiritual blindness leads us to a lack of compassion, a lack of realizing that we are responsible for our brothers and sisters who are suffering, and that it's our duty to reach out to them in whatever way we can to help alleviate their sufferings, or if not to people directly, at least to use our resources to reach out to the agencies that can be of assistance. Sometimes it's impossible for us to reach out directly to those who are who are in need. Sometimes we're afraid of being scammed by somebody who may not really be in need, but there are agencies who fulfill this function. Of course, the human touch is always important, and so even if one chooses not to donate to, let's say, the homeless, at least one can say good morning, good afternoon, exchange a smile, perhaps even stop and share a word. And if you don't want to give money, at least give a cup of coffee or something to warm somebody up on a very cold day. So then, spiritual blindness is one of the maladies that Jesus came to rescue us from. He came also to free us from captivity, whatever binds us, limits us, ties us down. He came to free us from oppression. Whatever it is that kills the soul in us, kills the spirit in us, whether it's an abusive marriage, whether it's an abusive work situation, whether it's an abusive situation in the place that we live, the country that we live in, that basically oppression is bad in all its forms. So he came to release us from the chains of oppression, and came to declare a year of favor for the Lord, a year of liberation. And a year doesn't mean literally 365 days. A year is a time, an era, a new beginning. And so the new beginning is ours at this still very new year, the beginning of 2019. Let it be a year of favor that extends into year after year after this. Let 2019 be the beginning of a time of grace, a time of redemption, a time of all good things, a time of spiritual awareness, a time of seeing through the window and not having our backs to the view. May 2019 be a time of grace, and I look forward to sharing it with you. Until next Sunday, this is Sunday Bible Chat.